So, welcome to the Red Rope Theatre audience. We great that you are able to tune into this session, and we're going to be talking all things theatre from the perspective of us wonderful women from Black Women Let Loose Theatre Company. Before we start, we'll just introduce ourselves. So, my name is Ruth.
I'm Christelle.
I'm Rachel.
Hi, I'm Valerie.
Okay, so there's Ruth, Valerie, Christelle, Rachel. So yeah, we thought we would just start with some, just give you an idea about how we set up as a theatre company, which was actually fairly recently in the scheme of things. And my recollection is that we had been watching a performance at Bristol Vic, which was the story of some Black men talking about their experiences growing up in Bristol and other parts of the UK. And it was a really riveting performance. And then afterwards, some of us in the audience just had a conversation about why are we as Black women not telling our stories? Why are they not out there in the same way? Is that how you recall it as well? Is it just me? I mean, that's my recollection. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty correct. And I mean, it was kind of spontaneous and organic, really, because we didn't really plan to set a company up at the beginning, or even to perform in my case. So yeah, very, very organic.
I wasn't actually at the performance, but I had a call. I think it was Ruth. Gosh, it's such a long time ago now. I had this call saying, "Oh, we're setting up a Black women's theatre group. Would you like to join us?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely." Excuse me a minute. Pause. And that was it. And I joined, and here we are.
You haven't looked back.
No, I think it's amazing that we all had similar ideas about the importance of us responding and doing something.
And it was, I mean, for those people out there that want to know about how you set up a theatre company, we did it in a very short space of time. I just remember a lot of frantic activity. We had like a month to set up the company, get a bank account, get a name, because we didn't even have a name, register. It was really quite frank. I mean, it's great that there's so many of us in the group. Well, we've got 6 of us in the group, and 2 of our members could not be here today, sadly. That's Shoma and Lorna. But we've all got a range of different skills, which is brilliant for setting up a theatre company, because obviously we're all performers, but to set up a theatre company, you also need people with other types of skills as well. I know Valerie is treasurer, and Christelle is assistant treasurer, and Rachel, your secretary. But there was a lot to do to set it up, wasn't there?
And I think initially when we did a performance first, so I think for us it was Shades of Our Lives and then done.
Yeah.
But I think from that feedback and the importance of what we did encouraged us to turn what we did into a company.
Yeah, I guess it's that idea of trying to tell our story and how it has impacted on other people's life, and hearing our story. I think that was kind of pushed us to create the company very much. I don't think if we didn't have that reaction, we would have continued.
But it shows it can be done, though, doesn't it? Because, we had only, as Valerie said, the idea was to do a one-off performance at the Bristol Vic, and that was going to be it, and we weren't going to do anything else again. And then, as Valerie said, the feedback was so great, we decided that we needed, people wanted us to do more, actually, and wanted to see it and hear our stories, more of our stories. That's when we set the company up. And it is doable, it is possible. Those people out there that think, I want to be performing, but it's really difficult, I don't know where to start. There are lots of companies that you can join, but you might also want to consider, how do you do your own work? How do you create your own work? How do you form a company to do that? And it can be possible. You can do it as a solo artist or as a company.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely challenges because of, you know, we've all got other jobs as well. So just finding the time. But as you know, once you're committed to something, and this group, what I love about Black Women Let Loose is that we're all committed and we're all doers, and we are given, we task ourselves, we task each other. And it's also been good for our creativity to kind of carry on. So because we're writing and performing, but also doing the kind of official stuff. So it's equipped us with more skills than you started off with. And yes, we've all got different range of skills, but I think we're all upskilling ourselves and supporting each other. So it's been a tremendous journey, and I'm really looking forward to kind of growing as a company and gaining more skills and doing more productions and doing more shows, because it's fun. It's hard work, but it's also a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any tips that we would give people to set up their own company? I mean, one of the things I said, always have a good website, because it's really important to promote your work, to market what you're doing, to have a channel of communication with people that are interested in what you're doing. That would be a tip for me.
And I would add that, yes, definitely to make sure that, you know, it's kept up to date as well. And that you're kind of engaging with your audience because they want to get to know you. So if you're doing productions or events or you're not, just make sure you keep everyone in the loop as well. Be responsive to requests for information as well. Be timely with that. You know, don't let people wait. Somebody sends a message and says, "Oh, we're interested." Don't leave it 6 months before you reply to them. You know, we have a kind of short. Most companies will say, "Okay, 3 days. Give it 3 days to reply to somebody." More than a week or two, it shows that you're not interested. So you've got to be, you know, on the ball. So again, it's about tasking yourselves and giving somebody that role to say, okay, check the email account, check the website for messages, and just keep it moving, as it were. That's what I would say.
I would say just grab any opportunity you can, and don't wait until you think you're an expert or trained to start a company. If the opportunity comes, just grab it and go with it. You never know where that leads you. There's so many opportunities that can be missed because we are too afraid to just grab the opportunity.
And enjoy what you do. I think if I didn't enjoy the end products of performing with women that I love, then there ain't no point doing it.
Agree.
And the other thing I'd always say is to keep crafting whatever you do. So keep writing, keep practicing, look for training opportunities that are out there online. There's quite a lot of free training around if you can get it, or low cost training. Just keep on looking at ways in which you can keep, you know, developing your craft. And writing is really important. I mean, we've been doing a lot of that during lockdown, haven't we? And that really helped us in the show that we recently did with Bristol or Vic for Ferment, because we've been doing a lot of writing over lockdown, and we had a very short space of time to produce a show, but luckily we managed it. But that was a lot for me. I know it was a lot. The fact that I've been writing over lockdown did help me.
Yeah. And how can you say to the audience about any tips about writing? Why is it so important for us to tell our own story? Have you got any tips or any advice on that point?
I think lots of famous people always say, write what you know, start from you. And that always sounds like, oh, I don't know what I know. But I know I'm more of a performer than a writer, but actually is finding out what engages me to put something down on paper. So during lockdown, we started with a fairy tale on Rumpelstiltskin, and we all wrote from different perspectives of who we were or the viewpoint of that fairy tale. So it sounds like a very simple exercise, but actually it got quite deep and quite experimental and fun and accessible. That's the word I'm looking for. It was accessible to do. So when people say, I can't write, I don't know how to write, well then record it and think imaginatively and get your creative juices going.
Yeah, what I liked about the Rumpelstiltskin story was I was able to put my story in it as a Black woman and look at the issues of maybe, discrimination, injustice within the story. So it became my story. So although it was, as you said, a fairy story that I actually didn't know much about, so I had to do some research, but it's a story that a lot of people do know, and it's got so many aspects to it. But to turn that fairy story into my story was really a lot of fun, but also had quite a lot of meaning for me. So as Valerie said, you might just want to start with a simple story if you don't know where to start, how to start writing something that you know, and how do you change it or create it to become your story. Yeah. So that's a tip I would give.
Yeah. Definitely agree. I mean, I found that exercise very empowering because I completely changed the story and gave power to the woman. And like Ruth say, I used it as telling my own story. What would I do if I was in that space or in that kind of situation? So it felt very empowering to write that story and giving a woman a voice, which doesn't really exist in those fairy tales as such.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. I mean, I think I stuck more to the traditional story, but I brought in the kind of African, the ancestors and praying for the ancestors or to the ancestors, sort of added some ritual. I mean, I'm not giving away the story of Rumpelstiltskin because I think you all know it.
And if you don't, Google it.
Google it, the kind of the forest and looking for the, trying to find the name of this individual that had come. And the kind of whole search, and he had to, search hard, but asked the ancestors for help. And I think that, for me, brought in the kind of African storytelling that is the tradition that I love. And I love to work in that form. And what was really interesting with the story is that we all told the same story, but differently, where some people just took it to complete other angle. I was just like, how did they even think of that? I think Lorna did it like a show, gosh, I can't remember how she did it now, but it was a modern take. It was like who did the news item? Somebody told it like a news story.
I did the news item, yeah.
So we were just like, wow, how did your mind go there? So I think because we're a group of 6 and we've all got a different, perspective, it made it really interesting because we went off, did it, and then we limited ourselves to a time to tell the story. Some of us went a little bit over, somewhere a little bit under, but it all matched. We agreed that it was fine, and just listening to that, sharing that, and then talking about that and how deep it went, I think made it feel like we could actually write more stories about Rumpelstiltskin. So definitely choose something that interests you. If you're asked to write a story about lemons, I couldn't think of a story about lemons. I tried, but it just didn't spark me. So make sure you're actually interested yourself, and that the enthusiasm will come out when you tell your story or perform it on stage. If you're bored, your audience will be bored. So make sure that it's okay, they say, okay, it might be your personal thing, so you think it's absolutely amazing, but no, you can tell your story and enjoy it. And enjoy telling it. Otherwise, nobody's going to want to hear it. No one's going to enjoy hearing it. That's what I would say.
And what I would say is also, once you've written it, practice telling it to people. So that skill of performance. So the good thing about us is we've been writing, but we've also been sharing our stories. And although it's been on Zoom through lockdown, we've been performing them to each other. And again, it's so important to just have somebody, a friend or a couple of people if you don't have the opportunity because of where we are at the moment, to just find different ways to perform the stories that you're telling. So you get a chance to practice, as I'm saying, back to practicing the craft, the skill, So the writing and the performing, it's always good to have people around you. And that's what's been great about us as a company. But if you're a solo performer, always try and find people that you can work with that can help you with that. Yeah, so talking about stories, and we've just started saying that, why is it important for us to tell our stories, do you think?
Well, I think it's about giving a voice to some of the story that we doesn't get told, but need to be told. It's almost giving the voiceless a platform, So how many times we finish a show and people come to us and say, oh my goodness, I can relate to your story. But actually, before even going on that stage, I never thought that that was the impact that's going to create. So when you might think, oh, my story doesn't really matter, actually, it does matter, because someone out there would relate to that story. So I think for me, it's, yeah, giving a platform for the voiceless.
Yeah. Is it more important, do you think, I said earlier, as Black women, because we hadn't heard, we said we didn't get a chance to often hear Black women telling their stories on the stage, and we'd seen 2 Black men. Again, we don't actually hear a lot of Black men telling their stories either. Is it important specifically as Black women, do you think, that for us to be telling our stories over and above other stories that have been told?
I think just what you've said is that our stories have not been heard. You know, we're silent, and we have a lot of experiences as Black women, and not being able to speak out. Sometimes you kind of hold those fears and those worries, but actually by kind of sharing, even within the group before we went on stage, sharing our stories for the first time with some of us. Some stories actually we're not ready, some of us, I know I'm not, to tell them on stage, but I've shared them with the group. It's kind of I suppose, healing and coming to terms and actually remembering for myself what my life has been. And actually we found similarities between us of our stories that we've experienced. You know, oh, that happened to you, this, that happened to me. And very much kind of what Christelle said is, when people hear our stories, it's actually quite emotional. And you can feel the emotion in the crowd, in the audience, when they relate or resonate, because that same thing has happened to them, but they've never spoken about it, whether it's shame or whether it's actually opportunity, because nobody's ever asked them. Nobody's ever said, oh, what's your story? Whereas we are asking each other what our stories are, and that's kind of triggering other people to actually start to tell their stories. Really important as Black women. And it's encouraging, I think, for our young people as well, to know that they can tell their stories, and there is a platform for them. So it's not just for us, but doing what we're doing is actually opening the door for others to start, because it takes courage. You need to be quite brave. But when you see 6 Black women on stage doing their stuff, you're like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So yeah, that's why it's important. I think we have a bigger role than just telling our personal stories.
And for too long, I think we haven't heard Black women's stories on stage. I think it's missing. So we're forever hearing diversity, we're forever hearing, you know, the world is made up of so many people, yet the stories we hear are not my story, our story. It's always somebody else's, and you go and see a performance and you sort of go, oh, yeah, I understand that. But as Rachel was saying, something about a feeling, when you really click and resonate with something, you go, yeah, that's my story, that's my truth, instead of somebody else's truth. So I think it's really important for artists out there to get it out there. And if you don't feel you can do it, then write it for somebody else to do it, to get your story out there. So you might have writings that you think, oh, no one's going to listen to this, I can't perform it. Then find people like yourself who will.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm just picking up on what Rachel was saying about courage. It takes courage, because it's also a risk, isn't it? It's all, I mean, given all that's been going on this year with Black Lives Matter, and trying to put our truth out there is a risk, because you know there are people that are going to counteract it as well, or deny it. And how do we cope, how, as a performer, because it's very personal, you know, you've dug deep, you've written your story, you've put yourself on the stage, exposed yourself to tell that story, and then great, there's a big percentage of the audience that will connect or say, oh, wow, that's amazing, I didn't understand that was your truth from your experience. That's, you know, I come very different background, very different ethnic group, and but I can get it. but then you also get the other side. It's like, so what? Big deal, overreacting, chip on the shoulder. What's all that about? You do get that. You have to also be ready for that response as well.
Absolutely, and don't take it to heart necessarily. Listen to it. You know, it's a critique, isn't it? But it's everyone's different point of view. So even if you get negative feedback, think about what that feedback is. Is it about the story, the content, or the way you present it? Mull it over, and actually, at the end of the day, you know, yes, having taken the courage and the risk, be prepared for some negative comments, but also don't take it to heart. Don't let it stop you doing your art. Learn from it. And in fact, it's actually empowering if you get negative criticism, because you can actually examine it once you've had a little cry, examine it and think, okay, what is there any truth in what that person is saying? And if that negative comment is actually their perspective, and check in with other people, see if it's more than just one person's view. And if it's like the whole audience, then okay, rethink. If it's just one or two people, think, okay, because sometimes I'm sure you watch a film and you think, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And then a friend will say, actually, that was horrible. So yeah, just don't take it all to heart. Listen, analyze it, but yeah, put it away as well. So you can carry on doing your work. Don't give up. That's what I say.
And the other thing I would say as well is you do require courage, but you also require vulnerability, telling your own story, because you're sometimes digging really deep into your own past. Does bring emotions and that you might not have expected as telling your story. So for me, I think having some kind of care, self-care, but also people to support you around. So for us, having 6 of us, I know I can always go to you all if I'm feeling really down and I felt that I'm really emotional. And I think for us, it has become a sisterhood, and we have each other to support. But I'm thinking if you are a solo performer, for example, you need to think about ways of how are you going to take self-care. And you work also even if you don't tell your own story. I mean, you could be an actor and telling someone else's story, which is very emotional and full of layers. And actually at the end of that performance, you might have taken all the emotion of that character. So how do you protect yourself and detach yourself from all those emotions? I think it's really important. And for me, you know, if I don't have the women around me, all my sisters here, having a bath, listening to some music, detaching myself to reality, just having that time to myself is really important. Just, yes, having to feel the emotions and then let it go. I think it's important.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, I had to get my head into my mind into playing white supremacy, which is, you know, so I'm just thinking about Krista, you know, look, I was able to dance it, and that made it slightly more, I don't even want to say easier, but more palatable. But if I had to, I don't know, I had to embody it in a different way, I think it would have been very difficult, because it's far removed from the sort of person I am to play white supremacy. So you're right. I think, you know, you have to think, you're going to tell your stories, you might have to play different aspects of your story. And some of those aspects may be bits that will be very challenging for you, because they're bits of your story or your experience or your life that has caused hurt or damage. And you need to think about how you do that. So yeah, it was good that I was able to do that and do it in a creative way using dance, but and movement. But yeah, I think it's really important that we look after ourselves, because as you say, it's a very vulnerable tradition actually to put yourself on a stage anyway, let alone to then be telling your own story in it.
I mean, linked to that, I guess, in terms of vulnerability, how have you, because we've been in this world where everything has changed so sudden, emotions flying around, how have you all coped with lockdown and our creative practice of change during that period?
Oh, Valerie was going to say, go on, Valerie, speak.
Oh no, I was just going to say that how we've coped is like what you said, Rachel, was about we gave each other tasks over COVID. So we met via Zoom on a regular basis, checked in with each other, then gave ourselves tasks. So it wasn't a, hi, how you doing? Glad to see your faces, bye. It was actually a creative space. And so that's important. So the creative space was the task that we set each other, and then we came back and when we read them and we shared. So that gave us the impetus to keep going and not to drag on or just have a chatting group of our sisters going, hi, how are you, and going. There's a creative center of what we do.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think that's, I mean, yeah, having each other, I think that was just, you know, 6 of us, and we all met regularly every week, and we'd do the tasks, and then we could chat. We'd sometimes be on Zoom for 3 hours, and that was it was painless, you know, because actually we did the tasks, told the stories, and we just chatted and we checked in on each other. But also for me, the way that I coped as well was doing my exercise, you know, Move GB, not to promote them, but so I had, you know, do Zumba in my living room, and it's, you know, it's quite, you kind of feel a little silly at first when you start, but for me, being physical was really important, because we were not out and about during COVID. You know, we did the creative stuff, so we'd write, but then the performance was great. Get out into the garden, like to have a garden, started planting vegetables, which I've never done before. I grew potatoes and squash and beans and tomatoes. So that for me was the way that I coped. And yeah, definitely being able to talk and write actually about what was going on for me during COVID, and also Black Lives Matter, which everything just kind of happened all at once. And it shook the world, but it shook me up as well. And being alone during that time, you know, I'd wake up like, you know, with nightmares, just with those images of, you know, George Floyd. So then I thought, what do I do with this? So then I just wrote it as it was, as it happened. And I shared that during our performance. And because it's emotional, you know, you're embodying it. And my voice broke at one point during the live performance, but I was able to carry on because you're on stage. But some of the feedback was that actually it connected me with the audience more because they felt my feeling. So, you know, so don't be afraid of actually using that. I know we're going back on that, but just that kind of whole experience, it strengthened me because I was able to write about it, and that's how I've coped during this time, which we all know about.
Yeah, I think the whole Black Lives Matter movement during COVID and lockdown just added to the trauma. Actually, I thought, you know, it's a traumatic time with lockdown and then Black Lives Matter. You know, we saw in Bristol with the Colston statue coming down and ripples going around the world, and people wanting to know what we thought and what was our opinion and wanting us to, you know, help them deal with their own guilt, etc. So it was quite a traumatic time. So for me, I did a lot of walking. I went and walked a lot, and that was, the weather was great, so that was really healing. But the balance of being able to write as well. So, you know, obviously lockdown, you're stuck in your house. What a great time to write. You know, it's a great opportunity, very few distractions. And also there was so much going on in the world that it sort of really, it made me want to write. I was, you know, I was picking up getting onto my laptop and typing, you know, because I wanted to write. I was driven to write. So I guess, yeah, I felt forced and wanting to write as well as walking. So there was a good balance of being in and writing head down, and then getting out, getting some fresh air, getting some exercise, walking with friends, talking with friends. And so, yeah, that's how I got through it. But when I look back, although there was a calmness in the writing, as well as being frantic, if that makes sense, it was quite a traumatic time because of all that was happening. And as a Black person, I really felt it. More people, you know, every time I kept hearing the news about Black people, you know, being more likely to be affected by COVID and dying of COVID. yeah, traumatic, difficult, but then that did inform my writing, and it did encourage me to write. So yeah, that I guess I gleaned something out of it that I wouldn't have if that hadn't happened.
I guess the other additional thing is that we've learned new skills working on Zoom. So, you know, when we started, it was just like, how do we do this thing? So, you know, the benefits actually, we will have skills, new, you know, technological skills, which I think most of us, if not all of us, hadn't ever done rehearsals on Zoom, you know, or performances on Zoom. So that has been a benefit. So now we know we can do that. So even if we can't always meet in person to rehearse, we've actually got this. This is an amazing opportunity. So yeah, just as on a practical note, a positive, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, for me, lockdown has been, well, I guess for a lot of people too. I mean, at the beginning, I felt quite creative, and, you know, I did a lot of writing and enjoying walking just down the road by the river. So I really enjoyed that. Then suddenly my life became really manic. I had a lot more work because I was working for an organization to deal with race inequality. So we got a lot more ask from different organizations. So I felt overwhelmed by it all. And from that point, then I really struggled to write. I felt like stuck because the emotion was so much. It was almost like I couldn't put the emotion into writing. But having us to meet every week, I think has been really, really valuable. So I couldn't get having to go to work every day. That's kind of stopped. But actually having people to connect to on a weekly basis was really, really useful for me. And I definitely encourage people to just connect with their relatives, their family and friends when time like this happen, because, you know, we are social beings and we do need that connection.
And routine, that's what's coming out strongly from what we're all saying. However we're saying it, there was a pattern and a routine to what we were doing.
Yeah. And actually also we created a production during lockdown, and and it was in a very short period of time, which on top of all the things that are happening in our life, we still managed to pull it off and have a very successful production. So, you know, we have pivoted, we've changed the way we're working, we just adapt as life was throwing at us. It's just instead of just being reactive, we're just being reflective, but also use the time. What can we do with what we've got?
It was good actually, wasn't it? Because that performance, we were commissioned and we had to write in a short space of time. So that really pushed us. But also I think we were very fortunate to be able to do a live performance in a venue with a live audience when a lot of theatres were closed. So we, you know, I just really appreciate Bristol Vic for enabling, you know, that opportunity to us and then enable it to happen, because I know a lot of friends who are performers are just still haven't gone back to doing any work live. And so it was really fortunate that we had the opportunity to do that. And the audience loved just being at a live show and seeing, you know, a live performance. And it was great to be able to give that to people and to receive, you know, their gratitude. Yeah.
And I think that sort of takes us first full circle in a way, because there's a group of 6 of us. We had some of yourselves writing the application to perform for Furman. So you had women in the group that were like, let's get on and do this and send it. And then it was accepted. And then between us, everybody having different jobs to get on and do it. So I think that's the strength of Black Women Let Loose. As we said in the beginning, about having different people in the group with different skills, but we're all doers. And if we're set tasks that we can do, we get on and do it. And that's one of our strengths.
Yeah.
Yeah, Exactly.
We're proud of us.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to be demonstrating some of our short excerpts of our work, are we not? Yeah, now?
Yeah, yeah. So hopefully that will give you a little bit of insight into who we are, and yeah, hopefully you've picked up some tips as well. So like Wolf said, we're gonna do some short performances and we can talk about it afterwards.
Put your best face forward. She said, put your best face forward. My auntie said that to me. She makes masks. And she made this one. And every day on the front line, I wear this one. And it got me thinking, we all wear masks. I wear a mask when I don't want to show the pain I'm feeling when people call me names and say hurtful things about me. What are they seeing when they look at my face and say nasty things about me? What are they looking at? Are they seeing the angry black woman, the strong black woman, the sexy black woman, the happy minstrel, happy clappy black woman, here to make you smile and laugh? No, because they're all stereotypes. So many stereotypes, and none of them me. So, if you don't see me, see who I am, and understand me, then this is the face I'm putting forward. So you've just seen myself performing masks, which I performed for our first show, Shades of Our Lives. And I wrote that in reference to how I was feeling, a bit about me, and a bit about my aunt who made the mask and had the saying about putting your best face forward. Because it's about understanding how difficult it is at times to show your real face. So that's where the seeds came from. And then since COVID, I've added the bit about the masks that were by law, we have to wear on public transport, going to work, going to shops. So there's lots of other ideas. And I think if I was going to write that piece today, it would be slightly different because of COVID and the mask wearing. I don't know if anybody else wants to say what they got from seeing the piece.
Well, for me, it was, definitely it's the different faces that we put on, as Black women, and the different roles that we play. And it's not always our true self. You can't be yourself all the time. And so we're almost performing in real life, actually. Different, so it's different. It's not an audience on stage, but it's the public, whether it's in work, we have a different face on. With family, it's a different thing. With strangers, it's a different face again. So I really resonated with that piece. For me, it felt like, I knew exactly what you were talking about, because I do that. For me, it's exactly my life. So it rang true for me.
For me, what I also got from it was this role of the minstrel, having to smile, put on a smile, regardless of what is going on around you, whether you're taking a beating, a licking, whether it's verbal or mental or whatever, and you still have to smile. And I remember when I grew up and sort of, you know, with that image, and it was a painful image. It was a really painful image, you know, that, you know, just smile, whatever's going on around you, be polite, don't let people see that you're hurt, don't let people see that you're upset. You have to make people feel that you're not going to be aggressive. You have to make people feel that you're not going to make them feel bad. So just take it and smile. And to be fair, my parents, you know, they had 7 children, and they wanted us to show, to have respect in the neighborhood. So every time we walked out the house, we were told to be on our best behavior. And in a way, you know, I get where they were coming from, but it did remind me of the whole minstrel thing about just having to smile regardless of what was going on in your head or around you. Yeah, so it's a really strong piece.
Definitely, and I actually will relate to that as well. And for me, I see the mask, how we have to navigate in a society where I've always felt like I need to make myself a lot smaller, not to make other people comfortable, not to make too noises, otherwise you get called this, you know, hungry Black woman. And actually, I think putting that mask is almost like make it easier, because you know what, behind that mask, nobody say that I'm making myself smaller. Nobody is feeling less comfortable because I am myself. It's almost like I'm hiding behind that mask to make other people feel more comfortable. So definitely, yeah, it does kind of relate that is a kind of using that mask to navigate, to almost survive in this society already. Yeah.
And then there's also something about being a strong Black woman. I was just thinking about what you're saying, Christelle. You know, there's this image about being a strong Black woman. And we talked earlier about vulnerability, not being able to show your vulnerability. And that is, there's carries a lot of pressure and a lot of, not just responsibility, but you're just carrying a lot when you're having to try to be the strong Black woman, not show your vulnerability, you know. And yeah, sometimes you just want to hide behind that mask. You just want to do it. So yeah, there's so many things to get from that piece, to take from it.
Thank you. I think we could talk about it for a lot longer, and I'm really conscious that we've got some more pieces to watch. So thank you. And if you've got any more questions, we can discuss later in our live lounge bit. Thank you.
Right. Well, I think we can move on. Maybe Ruth and Rachel, you can do your own performance.
Thank you. Oh, 3rd Zoom meeting at work today. I'm definitely not looking forward to this one. A conversation with my boss. I'm going to try hard not to be the angry Black woman.
Hello there. So we need to have a chat. You know, I just need to check that you're okay.
Right. Okay, about what?
Well, COVID-19, and well, you are at risk because you're a BAME person.
Don't call me BAME.
Right, okay. Personally, I don't see what the problem is. I mean, I get ethnicity, but I don't see color. I just see people.
No, you don't, do you? The thing is, if you don't see color, then you don't see me.
Don't see you?
I've been here all this time and you've never seen me.
Hey, okay, let's say we started off on the wrong foot, okay? I'm trying to do good here, to protect people, you know, you, because well, apparently you're more at risk of getting COVID-19.
That's not all I'm at risk of getting.
What? Huh. Listen, I'm just concerned about your health.
What about my health? Is it because as a black person, I'm more likely to end up in a psychiatric hospital, or more likely to be a victim of hate crime, or I'm more likely to be aggressively handled by the police?
Okay, I think you're the one being aggressive right now. Look, okay, I see where this is going. It's a sort of black thing and being victims. Is it because of that isolated incident in the media?
Victims? Isolated? There is nothing isolated about how we are treated.
Okay. We're all humans, all right? Your life matters, my life matters, all lives matter. We are all present and counted for, okay?
I have been present, but you have never counted me in. You have never considered me. You haven't seen me or my value. It took the death of yet another black man and a pandemic affecting more black people for you to finally see me here. And now suddenly I'm hyper visible to you.
Okay. What do you want?
I want to be seen.
Well, you are. I'm seeing you very clearly now.
No, I'm not talking about being visible. I'm saying I want to be seen as a human being, not as an issue. Not only when you want yourselves to look good. And I was trying so hard not to be that person.
I just don't get it. Just don't know what's going on. So you'll have just watched a piece called Visible Invisible, which Ruth and I performed, and it's part of our production that we did for Ferment. So the piece was about what happens for a black person, or what can happen in the workplace, and specifically during COVID, and those conversations that you have, and those statements that are made that the person saying them, in this case the manager, thinks it's actually quite normal, and there's nothing wrong with them, and actually, you know, being called a vain person, or, you know, all that incident, you know, it's almost like you've got this chip on your shoulder as a black person. So looking at microaggressions, and yeah, how black people are treated in work, that's essentially that piece.
Yeah, and for me, it's about, when we talk about racism, we're not talking about always sort of overt racism. It can be very subtle. It can be quite covert. And sometimes they're harder to challenge. I'm not saying the manager was deliberately being racist. I think the manager, and, you know, although you, Rachel, was playing the manager, who in my head was a white manager, who was trying to be helpful. But as you said, it was the microaggressions that are quite hard to challenge. They're very subtle sometimes. And that's sometimes why I could feel myself getting angry in that bit, because it was a struggle to know what to say back, because she was trying to be helpful and trying to be nice, but at the same time, she was being, I felt, insulting. So yeah, some of those behaviors in the workplace are difficult to challenge, but they should be, they need to be.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think one of the key things is that you were saying that they thought they were doing good. And also, most black people I know, you're afraid to even challenge, because, you know, you're being accused of using the race card, or being told specifically outside is like, don't ever cry discrimination, don't say that word, because you'll never work in that sector, you'll be fired, you'll be victimized. So for a lot of Black people in those situations, they may feel, you know, that this manager is being racist or saying derogatory things about them, but to challenge it, you're putting yourself at risk in real life. And you know, sometimes even holding that anger is actually detrimental to you as a person, to your mental health, to your state of happiness in work. But you have to work. So I know a lot of Black people stick with a job because it's a job and you need to work, but not happy, or they leave. And then it's always, why have you left this wonderful job you've left? It's because actually this is what's going on, but I've not been able to say anything to anybody, because if I do, I may never get a job in that sector again. So you're caught in a rock and a hard place, really, in this situation.
Yeah, or you miss out on promotion, suddenly you're overlooked. Yeah, you know, all those sorts of things, ostracized. Yeah.
I think it's the well-beingness, as the Rachel was trying to be helpful and showing concern. And you think, if you were going to complain about that, it's like, how can you complain? This person's come from a real nurturing, looking out about your health and really trying. And it's like, it makes you feel like you're in the wrong when you're not.
I was quite interested to hear from Rachel about how you felt playing a white manager, because earlier Wolf mentioned about playing a white supremacist. How did you feel about playing that role?
Well, I just related to actually being spoken to like that. That has happened to me, so I just flipped it and became that person. And it was weird, but because it's real, you know, I embodied it afterwards. I was just like, wow. It was like playing, you know, as a woman playing a man or a man playing a woman. You have to feel that person. You have to feel that. But because I've been on the receiving end of those and worse, it actually was okay. It was easy in that way. It was weird. It was
actually
easy.
It could have been a Black manager.
It could have been.
Could have been,
right.
Yeah.
And it has happened. Exactly, Valerie. It's about the system. I think that's what we need. Right?
Yes.
And the structures that even managers, bless them, have to work under, and being instructed, this is how you deal with these situations, and not necessarily having the training or the, I suppose, understanding of how to approach something so delicate as race, or how a Black person feels because so many Black people are dying. Is it just the media telling lies or whatever? So yeah, you're right. It could have been but I felt like I was a white manager.
But I think it's really important to say, when we talk about systematic racism, it's not just about the individual, it's about the organization, it's about the culture of the organization, it's about the way it operates. And no matter whether the staff are Black or white, if there is institutional racism happening in that system, then you're going to feel it, you're going to be a victim of it, you're going to be held back by it. And so, yeah, I think it's really important to say that it wasn't just about the individual, but it's also about the system.
And I think that's, for me, that piece was powerful in two ways. Powerful because, first of all, to showcase as an employee, I think he empowered people who watched that piece to say, actually, I need to speak up. I can't go anymore and being treated that way. But also, from the other side, for the employer side, it's to make them realize that their practices is so wrong, even if they feel like, oh, it's nothing, I'm just being helpful. Actually, it's not, you're not being helpful. So I think in both sides, it's being unhelpful. And I think also, when you perform it at Bristol Old Vic, I know some people felt very uncomfortable in that audience. And that's really explained how a small situation like that is actually so real, that people go into a situation every day and think they're not doing anything bad, but then realize for that pieces that actually, oh, my behavior is problematic. So I think it's really.
I think if there was time to do something and play around with that piece, it would be great to think, what are the other alternatives, rather than get up and walk away, because that was how I felt I was getting my power back, but was I really getting my power back? What might be the other ways of you know, challenging the manager without having to get up and walk away?
Yeah.
And you know, I know we want to look at developing this piece more, and it would be great for us to look at other ways to respond to those microaggressions in a future piece. Yeah,
because it's a good piece to forum, which is another skill in theatre, forum theatre, where you play something over and stop it. And if you were the boss, what would you say differently? If you were the member staff, how would you react differently? So yeah, great piece to forum.
We can use our real life experiences as well, I think.
Yeah.
Which would make it really interesting, is how we've all different, you know, in different ways responded differently. And this is something that, you know, it's right, you can use that to practice for real life when you have to challenge people, because it's difficult and also to understand what will be the outcome if it's a call and response. You say something, what's the manager going to say in response to that? You know, so yes, it is risky, but also I think really enlightening and empowering would be. I think, yeah, Ruth, I think we should definitely work on that piece.
Brilliant.
Wow.
Thank you.
Shall we move on to the next performance then? Well, I guess that's me. That's me. I can still hear the cry of my ancestors, which was death over a life of enslavement. I can still see the blood of my ancestors running for the city that denied its history. We believe that slavery and colonialism is no more, and the chains are broken. But don't be fooled. Don't be blinded. The chain may not be visible, but we are still enslaved by the system. Am I really free? From where I stand, history is repeating itself, and the oppressors are still the oppressors. They can still deport me, jail me, or even kill me as they please. They hate my melanin, but they appropriate my culture. They say colonialism has ended, but they continue to loot my gold, my diamond, my oil. And although I can still feel the strength of my ancestor running through my vein, I am confused about who I am in this chaotic world. I can no longer bear to carry all this pain. I can't sleep at night as I live in fear that another one of our sons will not come home tonight. I need to stop and stay still for a moment. I need to stop and listen. I need strength and energy from my ancestors. Okay, so you've just seen a small pieces of my performance, which is a small extract from Amma's Tide, and it was originally called Forever Forward's Amma's Awakening. So that is just the first section of that performance. And I chosen to write that piece because for me, during the lockdown and with the whole George Floyd situation, it just made me remind me that actually we haven't moved so much from history. It's just history, it's repeating itself. And we are still, the power are still in the hand of the same people that have oppressed us for many years. The structure in the system is still so powerful and kind of controlling our life. And I've kind of used the whole colonialism idea, and how today in Africa, you know, even if independence have been given to many of the countries in Africa, it's still the same people who own the power. You know, it's still the West who's using all the resources in Africa, the oil, the diamond, the gold. It's not the African who's actually profiting from all those resources that they own. So I felt like, wow, we have not moved on from all this history that we've left behind. We have left it behind, but it's still here. The modern slavery is still happening. You know, the oppressor, I think the whole killing of Black life, how the Black body is being treated right now, is still the same as it used to be in history. I mean, the system is still there. The ways they do it have moved on, have changed over the years, but the same system is still there. And I felt very much during the whole Black Lives Movement, Black Lives Matters movement. It felt like, oh, how are you going to get out? I think for me, it's created a lot more questions, like, how are we going to move on from this? What can I do as an individual to fight that system, those oppressions? So definitely, yeah, that's how I responded to the whole situation that happened during June forward time.
Yeah.
I don't know
mean,
how.
I would say I agree, Christelle, and it's an upsetting piece because of the fact that what has happened this summer just demonstrates that not much change has been made, and even if you take the toppling of the Colston statue, and like people saying, oh, you're erasing history, and not understanding why that history is so hurtful for us as you know, as Black people. The fact that to see a statue like that up in the city of a slave trader, a man who's traded people for profit, was so heinous and so atrocious that we had to endure that thing when we walked past it. And then for people to say, but you're erasing history, they just didn't understand the impact of colonialism and the fact that it still exists now, and that we are still being oppressed by it. And so that piece really ties in with what's been happening in Bristol, especially with its slave trading history, as well as the whole Black Lives Matter. And yeah, you know, when you say they're still taking our gold and our diamonds, and yeah, I'm just getting emotional just even thinking about it now. Yeah.
And I think my reference to the city who denies its history was very much linked to the Colston episode. I think I wrote it not long after the statue fell down, and because that, for me, it was an eye-opening in a way, because I felt like, okay, this is going to create change. But suddenly I also saw a lot of people being more vocal about how I felt that there was nothing wrong. And for me, that was like, wow. You know, before that, I thought, you know, we are in 21st century. People are more tolerant. Actually, no, there's still a lot of people out there who have a very conservative view and even very extreme view, and doesn't really, doesn't believe in the Black Lives Matter movement at all. So for me, yeah, it was definitely an eye-opener. And actually, I even, stopped being friends with some people that I've been friends before, because suddenly people were saying things that I didn't agree with. So for me, it was a really difficult time in a way. Yeah.
I do like the bit about stopping. We had a lot of time during COVID, didn't we, when we had to stop because we couldn't go out. And the bit about stop and listen for our ancestors and bringing them back in, and just whether it's religion or I can't say the word, spirituality. Thank you. There's something about stopping and listening to whatever that is our bodies, or, I mean, one of the things people have said that in reference to George Floyd is because we'd all had to stop and we were all in and we all watched it, because like you said, history repeated. He's not the first black man to have died at the hand of the police. You know, the reason why Black Lives Matter started in 2003. Yeah, 2003 was to do with a young black man being shot. So we're 2020 and it's still going on. So the bit about history repeating itself, but also about the stopping, I really think that's a strength in pushing us to where we are now.
Yeah, the stopping is definitely matching the whole lockdown period. And also I think for me, it was, we don't tend to take time out and reflect on what's happened. And actually we could learn so much from history, from even, I mentioned, oh, I need some strength and energy from that. So that kind of spirituality, we've kind of almost moved away from all that. And we don't really reflect, what can we learn from that? Definitely.
I think for me, I think, you know, we've all kind of said the kind of main things, but I think it made, you know, that time to age and reflect. And we've talked about it as a group that I've always known I'm black, but I became more aware of my blackness and the impact on black lives around the world. You know, so it was time to reflect and actually, oh my gosh, this is happening. And I felt fearful for my sons all over again. They would tell, you know, when Black Lives Matter erupted and George Floyd and all the comments, as you said, people were making on social media, you know, my sons lost friends who were just basically just didn't get it. People just didn't understand what the experience of black people is. And it's almost like you have to be stronger as a black person. But also, you know, you put yourself on the line, you felt more vulnerable, you felt more seen. Yes, we want to be seen, but not seen as the troublemakers, you know, or actually you've got a chip on your shoulder. But people then remembered some of the things that had happened to them throughout their as a black person, as a young black person. Oh, that, yeah, I remember that happened to me at school. Or my son said, oh, how many times they were stopped by police, and the fact that they weren't, you know, shot every time they were in, you know, out at night. I wouldn't sleep because I'd be like, oh my gosh, anything could happen. And, you know, things have happened here in Bristol to, you know, got so many situations around the world, but in Bristol, Stephen Lawrence and what happened to him, it shook our whole community. And there's been reports written and recommendations written, and nothing's changed. In my view, nothing changed. So history is repeating itself. It's just carrying on. All the right things are said. People make big statements. You know, Black Lives Matter. Yes, we're going to do this, and then nothing happens. So yeah, history repeated itself, but we need to find a way to change things. And hopefully, for us, I think through our performance and telling our stories and actually keeping on, even if it is uncomfortable. Stop.
And yeah, I mean, that's why we've performed, is trying to create conversation and dialogue. So we hope you've enjoyed all these 3 performances and our talk before that. And we will do a live webinar very soon. So do keep an eye on the Red Rope Theatre's website for more information on that. So we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.